how does one collect evidence of, let's say, domestic violence?
So, in fact, this is one of the first cases that came my way around 5-6 years ago. This lady said that I have been subjected to domestic violence, and the one way she was able to do it was her first allegation was that her mother-in-law tried to force feed her some sort of rat poison. Right?
Okay.
A lot of situations happen like this where I mean, allegations, of course, are, I was set on fire, or I was, oil was poured on my body and they were about to set me on fire and someone came and intervened, stuff like that. But in this particular case, what had happened was I think they slipped it into her food, or they had forcefully like opened up her mouth and fed her some sort of poison. And she rushed to the hospital. The evidence that she had was, now this what usually happens is, even an incident like this one would be considered a small one, where the family of the girl will come and say it is all right, it was like a misunderstanding, so you kind of live again with these people. But the girl did a very smart thing by keeping a copy of the report of the hospital where she went. One thing you can be a little more active about is that you can go to a government hospital. You can insist on it being an MLC certificate.
Yeah.
So for that, you go to the police once, and if you think that you don't want your in-laws to find out about it, you can still go to the police station. You can give them a complaint in writing. You do not disclose the address or the phone numbers of your in-laws, so that the police cannot contact them just to kind of extort money from them, or perhaps mediate a situation, because you don't want them to find out. You take the police with you, you get your MLC done, which is not very difficult, especially if it's a lady, if something like that has happened. Of course, if you're a man, you can also get it done. If your wife comes and beats you up, she hits you with a rod, there is some sort of this thing, or if you are perhaps apprehensive. There has been an occasion where I have seen a woman claim that she, someone used to slip some sort of things, those pills that cause abortion, into her food when she was pregnant, right? So though, if you're apprehensive about something like this, you go, you file a complaint, you say that some noxious material has been put in my food, which I believe is a punishable offense, which would of course be an offense under the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act as well. So you get yourself an MLC, right?
Getting this I think is a very critical point. So recently somebody approached me. She has been basically a miscarriage was caused to her. Basically,
Yes.
she was beaten and it led to a miscarriage. And what happened is that the family is very influential and is very, very rich. So what they did is that they took her to their doctor, somebody who's obviously, and she called me and said, what should I do? I said, insist that the doctor should get a medical legal certificate. And of course, she cannot keep calling me, right? So she called me once, confidentially, and then next what happens is that she contacted me and said the doctor refused to do it. I said, that's crazy. Doctor refused to do medical legal. How can that be? And then she later on told me that in fact she was given, there was no attempt to save the pregnancy. Rather, she was given medicines that led to her miscarriage. And when she went to another doctor, the doctor said, you have received all sorts of wrong treatment. And she realized that the doctor, because her husband's family took her there, it was a doctor who was compromised. So that is something to be careful about.
In fact, it's funny that you mentioned miscarriage and by the family. Around last year, we had a client whose wife,
and it's a very serious crime causing
of course,
a miscarriage.
313 IPC, and I know it, despite not being very, very common around, I know about it because I dealt with this case just last year, where a very enterprising lady who was also an official in the Delhi police was married to this man who was a client of mine, filed a complaint, and in the complaint she says that this man's mother and this man's sister, right, they caused my miscarriage by feeding me some medicine, and they did not tell me what it's about, right? Funnily enough, the family tells me that they did not even know about the pregnancy of the woman until they read the FIR after a period of 2 years from the alleged date of causing of the miscarriage. They say we never found out that she was pregnant, let alone a goddamn miscarriage. In any case, She has a certificate which says that yes, there was a miscarriage. She was pregnant. There was a miscarriage caused. On the basis of that document, perhaps it is like like an inspiration to all those women out there who say that I want to solidify a case against my husband. But this is also an advice against the husband, that if something like that happens, if there is a pregnancy, if there is an abortion, if there's a miscarriage, that could very well be put on your shoulders if the marriage goes south a couple of years from now. So you better be also prepared to tackle that angle as well. And the court did not grant bail to this man, and on a subsequent stage when his father was arrested, to the father, for almost a month on each end. These people spent hard time in jail, in judicial custody, for a month each before we were actually able to get them out on bail. So this is something which you should always be careful about. This is a dual-edged sword that we are putting out there. Collect evidence for proving your innocence, but also for proving your case against the other person when you are the complainant. We don't know if it's a genuine complaint or a false one.
Interestingly enough, in the long term, people who have more evidence usually wins.
That is indeed correct. That is indeed very correct. And in fact, the fact of the matter is, when you stick more to the truth, if you have a genuine cause of action, when you have a genuine cause, you will be able to have more evidence in your favor.
No, that is actually not true all the time, Amish, because people who are not prepared to collect evidence do not collect evidence. Even if a 10 things have happened to them, they never collect it. For example, this woman, the doctor did not give her a miscarriage report. The doctor did not record anywhere that there was a miscarriage. She later on went to another doctor.
Right.
And the doctor said, but that doctor hasn't checked her. She has no evidence of that what miscarriage.
Our foundation for this is that both parties are diligent and are going to pursue their evidence collection. And that situation,
but that does not happen. Most of the time, people do not collect
practically
evidence.
Speaking, it does not happen. A very good example that comes to my mind is this attempt to murder case that I was dealing with. My client was beaten up by a bunch of people when he was alone, and he was beaten literally black and blue. His skin had turned blue. This is what my client's relatives told me when he was in jail at that point of time. He was beaten black and blue by these people. They called up, a 100 number, and the local duty cop came. He told these people to apologize to this man who they had beaten up, and called it a day. They had no recollection of the diary number. They had no recollection of any 100 number. Of course, no FIR was registered. Although it being a very, very grievous case, because the man was bedridden for over 3-4 weeks, which makes it the offense of grievous hurt. But now, and a lot of people ask me okay, what do you what about murder? What about how do you represent these people? I've always seen that there is a very good reason why a lot of these things are done. Murder may not be justified, but if you listen to the entire story, you will at least understand why lawyers like us take up these cases, because it is never so black and white. Now, this man, after a month, after recovering, after healing completely, he wants to have his vengeance. So he takes a knife and goes and attacks the main guy who had attacked him and who had beaten him up earlier. Now, when he goes and attacks, they are smart enough to go get, call up the police, get an FIR done, get an MLC done. And this guy spent almost, I think, 10 months in jail before we were able to, go to trial and get him acquitted. So this is also one thing that everyone has to be very, very diligent about. First and foremost thing that you can do is to get as much evidence as you can. A great piece of evidence, the first and foremost thing that every single person should do if they get into any sort of situation which might involve the law at a later stage maybe, is to call up 100 number. Just dial those 3 digits on your mobile phone. That is the best thing you can do. In fact, just 5 days ago, I got a call from a friend of mine who told me that his father got into a small squabble with a neighbor of his. It's the same old story, it's the same set of facts, goes all the time. The 2 people had a fight and both went back home and forgot about it, except one person did not. One person called up 100 number, filed a written complaint with the police, and ultimately got an FIR registered in a span of say 2 to 5 or 10 days. Now the police comes hounding the other person who thought nothing of it. But now he does not have anything to show for it. The other person received injuries as well, but those injuries have now healed, and there was no medical legal certificate done either. The complainant party got the MLC registered, got an FIR registered, and now the other party has literally no ground of defense at least at this very stage. And of course, the complainant in this particular case was also a woman, so you know that, apart from the hurt that was caused to her, the assault that was caused to her, she was also assaulted with an intent to outrage her modesty. There was also sexual harassment, there was also stalking, and a bunch of other things which are usually the norm nowadays. So one is definitely calling up 100 number. That is the best piece of evidence you can collect for yourself. The police might not register an FIR, but at the very least, a diary number is created immediately the moment you make that call. It is in fact better that once you call the police, once you call up the 100 number, you ask them what is the DD number of this mobile phone call. They will give that to you so that you can keep it for your record purposes as well. The second,
I think that is very useful, that you can useful. Get the DD number.
Yes. Second thing that everyone should do is to use the increasingly pervasive technology that is there in our lives for our benefit. A good example that comes to my mind is I record all my phone conversations. It is on automatic. If I need to use a piece of conversation at a later date, I can withdraw that one call conversation and I can play that for any authority that is there. A lot of times we have these false rape cases, a lot of false sexual harassment cases, and a lot of them can be dealt away with very, very easily just by producing phone call records and showing that this is the conversation that happened between me and this person, and that is why the lies this person, whatever this person has said, are a complete lie. Coming to and of course now apart from these, there are case to case basis where your
also WhatsApp conversation.
Absolutely. So all pieces of technology use WhatsApp screenshots all of the time. There are a lot of people who delete their WhatsApp conversations for God knows what reason. I understand space in the mobile phone is a very pressing concern that everyone has, but for God's sake, get a higher storage mobile phone or back up all your data somewhere safe, because you never know what business dealing, what romantic venture, what sort of interaction that you have had with a fellow human being will land you in trouble, whether a criminal case or a civil case, and you will need that little piece of evidence in your favor, and all these little things create a massive fighting advantage for you.